Tonight, the biggest weekend since the pandemic. Two major international events and the start of the football season.
I'm live in George Square in Edinburgh as the festival gets underway, and we're finding out how soaring accommodation costs are putting some performers' plans up in the air.
It's day 2 of the World Cycling Championships in Glasgow. The streets are closed in preparation for the road racing.
I'm in Glasgow's George Square, where there's much excitement in the fan zone, but how is the rest of the city coping?
And we're live at Celtic Park ahead of a huge weekend of sport, including the start of the Scottish Premiership.
I'm Kellyanne Woodland in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6. Good evening. It's the biggest weekend of events since COVID. There's the Edinburgh Festival, the World Cycling Championships and the start of the football season. Thousands of people are taking part from more than 120 countries, and even more will be travelling around the country to watch. We're live across the country seeing how it will cope and giving you a flavour of the best of the action. First to Kellyanne in Edinburgh before heading back to Glasgow to find out about all things sporting. First though, Kellyanne.
Yes, we have a busy few weeks ahead of us, don't we? Because yes, festival season is indeed upon us, and that's when the capital comes alive with street performers and hundreds of thousands of visitors. Here at George Square, performances have been taking place all day, and everybody here is just soaking up the atmosphere. It really is a great feel to have the festival back in full swing. But behind the festival fun, there is a very serious side. Many acts have been telling us about the real struggle to find accommodation in the city, and some acts have been going to extreme measures simply to secure a place to stay. Vanessa Kennedy reports.
This disused nuclear bunker north of Edinburgh is now home for the month for these performers from LA. They've come all the way for the Edinburgh Fringe, but almost didn't make it because of the soaring price of accommodation during the festival.
To have a house to house my 7 comedians was going to be £30,000, and that would be sharing beds even. So we'd be working for free and, not covering our costs. So I was in tears that weekend because I thought I'm going to have to tell all these comedians who've got really excited about coming to Edinburgh that we've got to cancel.
They managed to strike a deal to stay here to raise the profile of this Cold War era bunker.
So I ended up purchasing these 3 trailers. They're very 1980s trailers. We're peeing in a porta cabin and all of us sharing one shower, but we're here.
Steve is another comedian who's come to the capital from the States for the second time. After spending thousands of pounds on accommodation, this year he's opted to take part in the free Fringe, but says the cost of that can still add up.
Last year, our plan was to come to the Fringe and do 2 things: have a lot of fun and lose a lot of money. And we did both of those things. This year, the goal is to break even, if we possibly can. If we make some money, fantastic, but we're not expecting it. We'll just see how we do. Do a show here at the Free Fringe is approximately $250 per show. We're doing 3 shows, so that's $750. But then you also have to register with the overall Fringe, and that's another $300 or $400. I don't know how a lot of people do it if they're not from here. Being from here does save an awful lot in travel and in lodging.
Jay is one of those people. She lives in Edinburgh and loves being part of this internationally renowned festival, but says the rising cost of living means that is becoming harder and harder, even for locals.
There's always that excitement of the Edinburgh Fringe. You spend all year working towards it, and then it happens and it's this amazing kind of showcase of talent. The other aspect of it is that it's absolutely terrifying that you're not going to be able to make your mortgage in September because you have not made enough money in August and you spent thousands of pounds getting there and producing, a show that doesn't make any money.
The people running the festival say despite the current economic crisis, it is still possible to do the Fringe on a budget.
This city's very commutable. We've got very good public transport networks, and trying to make sure artists understand that while it's nice to live a sort of 15-minute walk away from your venue, there's loads of other options that are affordable. The average ticket price at the Fringe is still less than £12. There's hundreds of free shows, pay what you want shows. There's loads of street performance. There's ways to do the Fringe on a budget.
But with a deepening cost of living crisis and acute housing shortage in the city, many performers, visitors and locals disagree. Vanessa Kennedy, STV News Edinburgh.
Well, of course, it's not just the Fringe taking place in Edinburgh. The International Festival kicks off today too. So I sat down with its new director, Nicola Benedetti, ahead of the official launch. I started by asking her how it feels to be the first woman and first Scot to take up the role.
I feel pretty calm and extremely excited, and I felt honoured to be in this role since I was offered it, but now I think the magnitude of it is sinking in a way that feels like immense gratitude, actually. You'll have seen that the festival asks, where do we go from here? Post-COVID, we had immediate challenges about what our future direction was, but now actually it's a time for really writing that. What amount of risk are we willing to take? How are we going to go into the future with a determination and a sense of relevance in funding and protecting the highest quality of art?
This year, very much cost of living crisis. Weekend you have the opening fanfare, which is a free event here in Princes Street Gardens. Was that very much in your mind?
Well, it's incredible to be able to do things that are free of charge for people, but further to our free tickets, we have a huge array of concession tickets. So we work incredibly hard to put those together and to make everything that we do as available as possible.
Just finally, we were looking through the STV archives and
we
found some footage of you as a young schoolgirl talking to us on the news.
How often do you practice?
About 1.5 hours on school days and 2 or 3 hours on weekend.
Do you think that young girl would ever have dreamt that you'd be in this position right now?
I think that strength of wanting to get closer to people is exactly the same as it was at that age. And would I have dreamt of this? Of course not, but I feel like the impetus comes from the same place and therefore it feels actually natural.
Nicola Benedetti, thank you very much for talking to us on STV.
Thank you so much.
Well, as you heard there, the opening fanfare for the International Festival takes place tomorrow. It's in Princes Street Gardens and it's free. And among the acts taking to the stage is the Ukrainian choir. They're one of several Ukrainians taking to the stage during the month of August. And Kay Nicholson caught up with them.
This community choir has given Ukrainian refugees a welcome sense of belonging. Tomorrow they'll perform to an international audience in the shadow of Edinburgh Castle.
For everybody here, it's very important because we try to bring our culture, our tradition, our song to people in Scotland and to show our heritage.
Olga fled Kyiv with her son last year. They feel at home here now, having met many others in a similar situation.
The majority of choir members are newly arrived Ukrainians, although there are friends who were born here whose parents are Ukrainians. I think that this is a way to express our gratitude to the Scottish people.
Meanwhile, Kyiv City Ballet is performing throughout the Fringe, and the dancers are embracing the opportunity.
Very important for us to speak with audience, to speak with people through moves, through our dance.
This performance is special because I represent our country.
The ensemble hasn't been able to return to Ukraine since the full-scale conflict broke out last February.
That's why we stay in Europe. We're trying to work for our country, to help our country the best way we can. And the best way we can is to dance. This is performance which I create with my wife to share love and think about only peace.
With thoughts of home never far from their minds, Ukrainian performers are hoping for a warm welcome from audiences. Kay Nicholson, STV News, Edinburgh.
And I'm sure a warm welcome awaits. Well, let's bring you some other festival news, because let's not forget, several festivals are all happening at the same time. The young climate activist Greta Thunberg has cancelled her appearance at the Edinburgh International Book Festival after accusing the sponsors of the event, Baillie Gifford, of greenwashing. That's something strongly rejected by the company. Well, there's never a dull moment during the festival, is there? But I'll be back later in the programme. But for now, it's back to you, John.
For the moment, Kellyanne, thank you. Well, a huge event in Edinburgh and another major event here in Glasgow and across Scotland. The UCI Cycling World Championships featuring the world's greatest cyclists. Add to that the start of the football season and an international rugby match, and you've got potentially hundreds of thousands of people trying to travel around the country. Our reporter Courtney Cameron is in Glasgow city centre for us, where already there have been major hold-ups. So Courtney, how much travel disruption can we expect?
Yes, John, well, I'm in the fan zone at the Cycling Championships and the atmosphere here is buzzing. Hundreds of people have gathered, the sun is shining and everyone's just really soaking up that atmosphere. But of course, over to the left of me here is Queen Street Station, and staff there say they're expecting a bumper weekend full of sports fans and arts fans as they make their way across the country for different events. Now, motorists travelling in and out of Glasgow and Edinburgh today will probably have already faced delays, and the road closures here in Glasgow are set to stay for the next 11 days.
It's going to be really busy, but we've got extra trains, extra services out across the network to get people where they need to be. We're running a full normal timetable.
If you're travelling by car, please look at the Traffic Scotland website, look at Get Ready Glasgow. Be aware of where there's road closures and be aware that there might be delays, and if possible, please leave early or delay your journey to a later time so that we can try and keep traffic moving.
Now, with so many fans travelling around this weekend, it looks like it's going to be one of the busiest weekends of the year for the transport network. Here in George Square is where the road races are going to finish and the medal ceremonies are going to take place. So there is going to be quite a bit of disruption. But while journeys may take a bit longer than usual, there's certainly going to be no shortage of entertainment for sports fans this weekend.
Courtney, thank you. Well, the Cycling World Championships may be based in Glasgow, but this weekend one of its biggest and most prestigious events takes place right across the Central Belt. The men's elite road race starts in Edinburgh on Sunday morning, and our senior reporter Gordon Cree has been looking ahead.
In and around Holyrood this morning, there were clues something major is happening. But with Edinburgh in festival mode, it seems so far an international sporting event is managing to slip under the radar.
I saw something on the motorway that there was an event happening, but I don't know what it is.
One of the big races is going to start here on Sunday.
Oh, right. That's excellent. We might come out and watch.
You see there's signs about an event happening
We don't
here.
know anything about that.
On Sunday, setting off from among some of Edinburgh's most well-known landmarks, some of the world's top cyclists will take part in an epic test of speed and endurance, the men's elite road race, taking them across central Scotland to Glasgow. With a start in Horsewind between Parliament and the Palace, the field will head up the Royal Mile and through the city centre. The 271-kilometre route takes them over the Queensferry crossing to Fife. They then pass through Kincardine and loop round the Falkirk area. That's before climbing into the Campsie Hills and the Crow Road above Lennoxtown. Well, I've clearly not got the kit, and I certainly don't have the talent either, but even just a short cycle up here gives you some idea of the challenge these competitors will face this weekend. On the summit, we met Sandy, who's been over this road more than 100 times.
It's a tough climb. I know obviously a lot of these guys have just come off the Tour de France or they've been involved in big events, so it's not that big a climb, but it's a punchy little climb that they'll definitely feel.
It's then down into Glasgow before 10 laps around the city street circuit with the finish in George Square. Today's action has been in Perthshire with the Gran Fondo for the best amateur riders.
And as if the Edinburgh Festival and the biggest cycling event the world has seen aren't enough, the football season is also kicking off. Well, Ronnie Charters is at Celtic Park. So, Ronnie, what can we expect across the country this weekend?
Well, John, the eve of the Premiership season is that time when fans can be as optimistic as ever, when every team starts on 0 points and hopes can be high for the campaign ahead. Here tomorrow lunchtime, Celtic get the curtain raiser underway against Ross County. More than 60,000 fans will watch Brendan Rodgers' team unfurl the champions flag and get the season underway. But it's not just the football, of course. At Murrayfield, thousands will be in attendance as Gregor Townsend's men continue their preparations ahead of the Rugby World Cup as they welcome hosts France to the capital. And if all that wasn't already enough to whet your sporting appetite, then of course, as well as the cycling, Scotland and the rest of the world's top female golfers are currently in action on the Ayrshire coast to see who will be crowned winner of the Scottish Women's Open. Sport as far as the eye can see this weekend. Hundreds of thousands of people in attendance as well, and we'll have more of that sport in tonight's programme.
Ronnie at Celtic Park for the moment, thank you. Well, back to the main event in Glasgow and to Courtney in the fan zone in George Square. It's already packed and will be open for businesses throughout the championship. So, Courtney, what's the atmosphere like?
Well, John, I've spent most of the day in the city centre and you can really just feel the buzz in that atmosphere. It's really been something a bit different today. Hundreds of people have been gathering, they've been lining the streets to watch the different cyclists from different countries cycle up and down our streets, and the sun has been shining, which has really helped which has really allowed people to soak up that atmosphere, And as I said earlier, the atmosphere in the fan zone is really heightening, and that's only going to get more and more over the weekend as more events start to take place. Now, businesses and taxi drivers are really starting to feel the impact of our road closures though.
Getting around Glasgow on 2 wheels this weekend will certainly be easier than normal. But for commuters and delivery drivers, it'll be no mean feat. Those walking around on foot today were soaking up the atmosphere.
It's been kind of quite overwhelming. You're going down all these cars coming past, and you have nowhere to go, and then the bikes are following them at the back of them. They go at some speed.
It's great to see so many people in Glasgow and walking around and just getting involved, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm not a sporty person, but yeah, it looks pretty cool.
I'm a big cycling fan myself, and I usually follow these. Last year it was in Melbourne, it was in Australia. It follows over the world, so it's an absolute privilege for it to be in Glasgow.
On the second full day of the event, it's already proving difficult to drive around the city. For the next 10 days, dozens of roads and motorway junctions will remain closed. Taxi drivers say this is impacting their trade and visitors' ability to reach certain events.
Today it's just been an absolute nightmare. The two busiest train stations, Glasgow Central and Glasgow Queen Street, no provision for taxis, no provision for public transport. So anybody that wants to actually go and watch an event, gets off a train today, they've got no chance of getting to the actual arena or anywhere else because there's gridlock everywhere. That amount of tourism and that amount of people into the city are great, but it shouldn't be at the expense of the normal working person in the city centre. I mean, there's businesses that are having to close today, there's people that can't get to work, and we can't do our job.
Today, this donut shop was forced to close after staff couldn't get access for deliveries. Further along the street, this chip shop is enjoying the boost in business, but says planning has been key to ensuring things run smoothly.
It brings a lot of clientele in and brings a lot of awareness. The city's a lot busier. The only downside would be the road closures affecting deliveries and people getting into it for transport. But luckily it's only on for a short amount of time. People are planning around that. Our suppliers are working with us.
You know, we do as much as possible to get the message out. You can't do something like this on this scale without a bit of disruption. And we are one of the world's best event cities. And if we want to stay one of the world's best event cities, and keep attracting big global events like this, then there will from time to time be a bit of disruption.
While Glasgow enjoys one of the biggest cycling events in history, those hoping to travel this weekend are being reminded to leave extra time. Courtney Cameron, STV News, Glasgow.
Now, Raman is here with the rest of the sport, and after all of that, is there anything left for you to say, Raman?
As you know all too well, John, I've always got something to say. As we mentioned, the Premiership season gets underway tomorrow. That's me sorted for the next 9 months. A number of changes to the Rangers squad, and tonight we've got news of a player who could be heading out of Ibrox. Good evening. Fashion Sakala is holding talks with Saudi Arabia side Al Fayat after Rangers accepted a bid of £3.5 million for the attacker. While Sakala's future lies away from Ibrox, a number of players are set to make their competitive debuts against Kilmarnock tomorrow. Michael Beale has made 9 signings ahead of the new season, and he says he's extremely satisfied with the backing he's received from the board. Fashion Sakala signed off last season in style, but his goals against St Mirren could be his last for Rangers. The forward has attracted interest from Saudi Arabia, and Michael Beale has revealed the 26-year-old could seal his exit from Ibrox in the coming days. While the Zambian isn't part of Beale's plans, these players are. The Rangers manager has rebuilt his squad, making 9 additions in the summer, and he's delighted with the business he's done.
We've lowered the average age of the squad, obviously. We've got players in that I think have got a good value and a good pedigree, so it's important now we let this team bed in and show their ambition on the pitch in performances. Certainly the motivation around the building seems to have gone up a few notches, but that's just words. Let's show it on the pitch now.
Beale's tasked with ending Celtic's dominance. Back at the club for a second spell, Brendan Rodgers is relishing the challenge of delivering more trophies after last season's clean sweep.
Celtic as a club is a high expectation, high standards that are always set, and as any manager that comes into here, that's what you embrace, and it's also what you look forward to. So for me, I understand what they are, and that was one of the big reasons for coming back here, to try and continue and develop those and improve those.
The champions kick off their campaign at home to Ross County tomorrow, the first of 38 games, as they aim to secure the Premiership trophy for a 3rd successive season. Hibs manager Lee Johnson is hoping his players will use their positive result in their Europa Conference League qualifier last night as a springboard as they get set for their Premiership opener.
Boys would have been buzzing last night after a very good performance, a good evening for us getting into the next round. But very quickly the focus turns onto, first and foremost, recovery, and then obviously our very important season opener against St Mirren.
For fans, everyone's excited by the season. Everyone can dream, and it's our goal to try and make them believe that we can achieve something.
Hearts head coach Frankie McAvoy says he's happy with the transfer business they have done, but admits he's looking to add a few more players to the squad. Japanese forward Kiyosuke Tagawa became the 4th addition of the summer, and Kenneth Vargas is set to join the club next week. Hearts start their campaign away to St Johnstone.
We're actually doing that, the recruitment team, Stephen's working closely with Joe in terms of trying to identify other targets, as we always do, but we're happy at the moment, but again, if we can get another 1 or 2 through the door, we'd be absolutely delighted.
Well, it's not only the clubs who are getting ready for the new campaign. Scotland's top-flight referees are preparing for their first full season with VAR. A raft of new changes will see 2 officials solely dedicated to VAR. An independent review panel has been set up to evaluate decisions, and there's set to be much more time added on during matches.
When you've got 6 screens in front of you, a slow motion replay and still images, then there's not going to be a lot of forgiveness if you get it wrong. So it's a different type of pressure. You still leave here on a Saturday or a Sunday exhausted, I'll be honest with you. I've seen me leaving the VAR station, sweating, because you want to make sure everything's correct. For 90 minutes or 90 plus minutes, total concentration required. I think, like I say, there's less forgiveness in here than there is on the field of play.
We are now going to be adding time for goal celebrations. So if you have a game in the second half that's maybe had 3 goals, 4 subs, a head injury, maybe an on-field review, I think you are going to see 7, 8 minutes, 9 minutes going up sometimes. But that's going to be global, and Scotland's not going to be any different from anybody else in that fact.
That, folks, is all your sport tonight. Have a great weekend. I'll see you on Monday.
So, plenty going on. Will we get the weather for it? Well, Sean has the weekend weather forecast.
Get set for a wet spell. TUI sponsors STV Weather.
Good evening. Well, it hasn't been too bad a day out there for most of us. A lot of dry weather, sunny spells. Few showers have cropped up, mind you. We'll start to see some rain gathering from the west overnight. That should hold the temperatures in double figures. Now, tomorrow we've got a named storm sweeping its way across England and Wales. They're going to have a pretty horrendous day in some spots. Gale force winds and heavy rain. We are right on the edge of that storm system, thank goodness. So the weather is certainly much quieter for us. However, we will see some heavy showers. I think probably to start the day, the worst of those showers will be across Fife and Edinburgh, but then they'll head our way into the afternoon. So expect lots of showers around in the afternoon, especially across the mainland, and some of those will be on the heavy side as well. Now, traditionally, on average, this is the warmest week of the year. Very disappointing. 16 degrees Celsius tomorrow afternoon, 61 in Fahrenheit. So feeling cool, especially with those showers around in the afternoon. For the Dundonald Links, I expect we will see some of those heavy showers coming in later on tomorrow, but hopefully, fingers crossed, fewer showers on Sunday. Lots happening. UCI, we've got the elite men's race on Sunday. It does look as if we'll see some showers, especially as we head towards Edinburgh here. Saturday, the junior road races, and risk of some heavy showers here during the afternoon. Temperatures about 16 degrees. So a showery weekend, but the weather does look as if it should quieten down a little bit during the middle part of next week. Bye-bye.
TUI sponsors STV Weather.
So a busy weekend ahead, no excuse for being bored. It's goodbye from me and back to Kellyanne and a giant chicken, ninjas and jugglers. Kellyanne.
Well, it wouldn't be the festival without the weird and the wonderful, would it? These are Escalate. These are the jugglers who've just come off stage and they're on every day during the festival. Let's have a catch up with more of the acts. Tell us about your act.
Batsu! Noriko-san, Nihongo wakanai desho. They don't understand Japanese. So, Batsu is inspired by Japanese game shows and improv comedy. We have in our game show 4 comedy warriors who compete in hilarious challenges, and they have to face off against wacky characters like you can see behind us.
Oh my goodness.
Now we're on every night, late night at the Cowgate, 10:45. Come check out something you've never seen before.
Well, it certainly sounds like a lot of fun. Just check them out, chickens, ninjas, jugglers. You've got everything going on here, I think.
Oh yeah.
Well, that is all from us here on the ground in Edinburgh at the festival. From all of us here and in the studio, it's good night. And wherever you're up to this weekend, I hope you have a great one and I hope it goes with a bang.